Okay, well, it all started with the ultimatum that he was given by Megan prior to the wedding. She claims it was staged photographs, which it was backgrid, and that whole little controversy.
Yeah.
They were all involved together in making my dad look bad on purpose. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. When you put the pieces together, it falls in like a puzzle. Um, uh, Samantha and I could not go. He had to disown us if he wanted to attend. That with the pictures purposely being released before the wedding gave him a heart attack. Hands down, the stress just did him in, and not one phone call. I mean,
especially in those moments, we can help each other heal through our friendship, through our love and support. And that was so heartwarming to see just such beautiful examples of that today. I mean, it wouldn't have been possible without the Duke and the Duchess, without Harry and Meghan creating and building this beautiful community. But it's what we need more of today because, and sometimes, especially in those moments, we can help each other heal.
Dealt with so much stress and anxiety for the years to follow, up until like the May before last, almost a year and a half ago, where he suffered a really, really good stroke, and and nothing, not a phone call, not
Yeah.
a I care, not how are you, oh my God, I have to get there. No, I'll go to Uvalde and do a photo op. Huh.
You see,
While my dad is in the hospital, we're watching it on TV.
So I think parents also have such a powerful role. We were earlier today talking about MAD, an organization many of you may remember, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I know you remember.
We were saying, we remember yes, and the talks that come to school and
and for those of who may not remember MAD, it was an incredibly powerful movement of mothers who said this drunk driving crisis that's leading so many of our loved ones to lose their lives, to be injured, to be disabled. We are going to do something about this. We're not going to accept this as just a price of modernity. We're not going to say, well, an automobile has come on the scene, well, we just have to accept this as the cost. They said the cost is too high, and we are going to do something about it. And that is what I think parents have the power to help us do today. They shouldn't have to take this entire burden on their own, but I know and I have seen firsthand that when parents use their voices, when they come together to call for change and to push for change, there are few voices that have the moral clarity and the strength that they do, and we need them more than ever.
Birds of a feather flock together. My gorgeous, good-looking friends, get comfortable. This video is going to be a doozy. Hey, everybody. This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. As we all know, a few weeks ago, the Harkles were in New York and did this session with the U.S. Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy. It left us all scratching our heads as to why the Surgeon General, a respectable position, or at least we're supposed to think that, had been teaming up with Meghan and Harry. I think the majority of the public is at a point where anyone associated with Meghan and Harry lose their credibility. And I agree with Katie here. Right off the bat, people lose credibility, at least in my eyes, for associating with these two. But what's starting to become clear to me is with this couple, like attracts like. And when we look at Harry and Meghan and the people that they associate themselves with, you start to discover they are all cut from the same cloth, and it makes sense as to why they're associating with one another. Let's talk about Vivek Murthy. According to Wikipedia, he is an American physician who was born in Huddersfield, England, to immigrants from India. And he is a vice admiral in the United States Public Health Service Commission Corps, who has served as the 19th and 21st Surgeon General of the United States under Presidents Obama, Trump, and Biden. Murthy is the first Surgeon General of Indian descent, and during his first term as Surgeon General, he was the youngest active duty flag officer in federal uniformed service. He went to Harvard and Yale and received one of those Soros fellowships. And in 2022, President Biden nominated this guy to be the U.S. representative on the World Health Organization's executive board. And just a quick note, for those that don't know what the Surgeon General role is, He is essentially the nation's so-called doctor, providing Americans with the best scientific information available on how to improve their health and reduce the risk of illness and injury. Keep that in the back of your head. That's the sanitized version, but let's get down to the real. So this guy, Vivek Murthy, he advised Joe Biden on the pandemic during the 2020 presidential campaign, culminating in Murthy's nomination as Surgeon General. He also maintained, get this, a lucrative side business as coronavirus consultant to the private sector. Dr. Vivek Murthy was paid millions of dollars in coronavirus-related consulting for various corporations such as Carnival, Airbnbs, rental properties, and other firms. In addition to collecting hundreds of thousands of dollars in speaking fees, all of this was found in the ethics documents that he filed in this application as Surgeon General. First go around, he was President Obama's nominee and made it in. Then, when Donald Trump got into office, he abruptly fired him. So now he's back under the Biden administration, and he's now living the good life as his net worth has skyrocketed over the last couple of years. So this high-ranking U.S. government official is the lead on the government's approach to public health issues, like what we saw with the pandemic. You got to wonder, how much money did these politicians, as well as these wealthy elites, make off of this pandemic and the suffering that the world endured? Since Harry and Meghan are all about revisiting the past and rehashing things that happened, let's talk about this demand for fair COVID vaccine rollout. I mean, we all know that this couple doesn't do anything unless there is a payday attached to it. So I wonder, how much money did these two make off of trying to get these vaccines out to the rest of the world and into people's arms in order to profit? There's a good chance that these two hypocrites, they themselves didn't take this vaccine. Maybe Harry, but definitely not Meghan. Otherwise, they would have broadcasted it like they do with everything. Let's not forget that Meghan had to show everyone that she voted like nobody cares. This would have been the time to show your words in action. And Meghan's clear target was exploiting underserved minority women in this speech.
My husband and I believe it's critical that our recovery prioritizes the health, safety, and success of everyone, and particularly women who have been disproportionately affected by this pandemic. With the surge in gender-based violence, the increased responsibility of unpaid care work, and new obstacles that have reversed so much progress for women in the workplace, we're at an inflection point for gender equity.
So where are we now with this vaccine equity? Oh, that's right. Meghan and Harry jump on a bandwagon, and then they quickly jump off once it's not profitable anymore. We've now seen a slump with pharmaceutical companies losing money with all these vaccines that no one's taking anymore. So my guess is now the Surgeon General and Harry and Meghan, well, we know Harry and Meghan have moved on to exploiting mental health. And if you look at the Surgeon General's investments, they're up in the public domain, you will see that he now has more investments being put into mental health. So it explains this garbage that we're seeing here. Americans have the right to be mad because the people in charge do not have the best interests of the Americans at heart. It is about greed, it's about lining their pockets, and it's about control. And vultures like Meghan and Harry and those who associate with them are going to be exposed. And that's exactly what's happening now with Vivek Murthy. Yes, friends, he's one of the star players in the Missouri versus Biden case that's now going to the Supreme Court. And how lucky is he that they've changed the court case name to Murthy versus Missouri? Now, I'm not exactly sure why the case name changed from Missouri versus Biden to Missouri versus Murthy. Maybe because it's now at the Supreme Court level and the president is exempt from lawsuits. But this is not a good look for Vivek at this moment. In going through this court case, Vivek has a lot in common with Meghan and Harry, as they both favor suppression of speech and censorship.
Joining us now, the Surgeon General of the United States, Dr. Vivek Murthy. And I'd love to talk to you more broadly about our ability as a country to stop the spread. I'm here in Poland, and there's a couple of places that I've been to, including a school, which has never missed a day since COVID began. Their technology and their practices are all aligned so that they had an effective way to stop the spread from day one. And I just wonder if all of our abilities to stop the spread in the United States are aligned correctly by the government.
Well, Mika, it's a really great question. And I do feel hopeful that we do, in fact, have the tools that we need to not only get this virus under control, but actually live our lives. That means have our kids in school. That means be able to work, be able to see our family and our friends. So what are those tools that we need? Well, we need vaccines and we need therapeutics for sure. Those are medications that can reduce the severity of the virus. We also need widespread availability of tests and masks. And we need good surveillance systems and investments in ventilation. A lot of those investments have been made, in fact, over the last year, but we actually need those to be implemented fully in schools and workplaces across the country. And that's where we have more work to do. To me, Mika, two of the biggest barriers we have right now to ensuring the tools we have are actually put to work to end this pandemic are the politicization of the pandemic, unfortunately, but also the misinformation that we've seen really spread like wildfire during this pandemic. We've got to address those if we want to get through this pandemic and get back to normal.
Let's talk about misinformation and Dr. Vivek's contribution with it on social media. In the court documents, bullet number 159, it says, on September 26, 2021, CDC Director Walensky cited an Arizona study to claim that schools without mask mandates were 3.5 times more likely to experience COVID-19 outbreaks. However, the study is so flawed that experts have said it should not have entered into the public discourse and that you can't learn anything about mask rules from the study. This was dated in a letter, March 11, 2022, U.S. Rep. Kathy McMorris Rogers to Surgeon General Murthy. And it says, yet Director Walensky's statement circulated widely on social media without being censored. Bullet number 220, at a White House press briefing with Bisaki on July 15, 2021, Surgeon General Vivek Murthy announced that health misinformation constitutes an urgent public health threat, stating that he had issued a Surgeon General's advisory on the dangers of health misinformation. Surgeon General advisories are reserved for urgent public health threats, and while those threats have often been related to what we eat, drink, and smoke, today we live in a world where misinformation poses an imminent and insidious threat to our nation's health. Surgeon General Murthy stated that modern technology companies have enabled misinformation to poison our information environment with little accountability to their users. They've allowed people who intentionally spread misinformation, what we call disinformation, to have extraordinary reach. He accused their algorithms of pulling us deeper and deeper into a well of misinformation. You know, that's rich for a guy who is hanging out with Harry and Meghan, who are super spreaders of hateful information. Surgeon General Murthy explicitly called for more aggressive censorship of social media speech, stating that we're saying we expect more from our technology companies. We're asking them to monitor misinformation more closely. We're asking them to consistently take action against misinformation superspreaders on their platforms. He also stated that technology companies have a particularly important role to play in combating misinformation. He stated, we know that the dramatic increase in the speed and scale of spreading information has, in part, been enabled by these platforms. So that's why in this advisory today, we're asking them to step up. We know they have taken some steps to address misinformation, but much, much more has to be done. And we can't wait any longer for them to take aggressive action because it's costing people's lives. When you listen to these people, they all sound like they're reading from the same playbook. If I read this out and told you this was Prince Harry or Meghan quoting this, you would believe it because this is something that they have been saying. I mean, literally verbatim. It's costing people their lives. Oh, wait, excuse me, children's lives, according to Meghan, because she is this caring so-called mother. Bullet number 246, example of government overreach. Media reports aptly describe Murthy as demanding information about the major sources of COVID-19 misinformation by May 2nd, 2022. Brad Dress, Surgeon General, demands data on COVID-19 misinformation from major tech firms, according to The Hill. In a formal notice, Murthy requested major tech platforms submit information about the prevalence and scale of COVID-19 misinformation on their sites, from social networks, search engines, crowdsourced platforms, e-commerce platforms, and instant messaging systems. That's invasive. In his notice to major tech platforms, Murthy is requesting specific information on demographics affected by misinformation, as well as sources of misinformation and exactly how many users saw or may have been exposed to instances of COVID-19 misinformation. Now, do you understand why governments in the Western world are so in a hurry to get these laws put in place? Because this essentially is invading people's privacy. And with those laws, especially now with the online safety bill, the government or Ofcom division has full range of reading anything that you put on the web, anything that you search, any discussion that you have with another person. These laws are gross invasion of people's privacy rights. But the laws being passed that we've seen in the UK, in Australia, in Germany, in the European Union, free speech doesn't exist. They may fool everybody by saying they're trying to protect people's free speech, but we all know that that's garbage. The United States is the only nation that has this kind of protection, and we have to defend it at all costs. That's why this Biden versus Missouri or Murthy versus Missouri now is so important and going to the Supreme Court. So, folks, I'm keeping my eye on it, but you see the level of greed that we have going on here. The people involved who are pushing this stuff and trying to control what we're saying online. I mean, evidence clearly of bad intentions with Meghan and Harry. We've learned how these people are trying to manipulate us into thinking a certain way. And, you know, the harm that they're causing, they themselves, is criminal, in my opinion. Here's another example, 369. As another example, on May 28, 2021, a senior executive of Meta sent an email to Slavitt and Murthy reporting that Facebook had expanded its censorship policies, evidently to satisfy federal officials' demands made at a recent oral meeting. The email stated that a key point was that we're expanding penalties for individual Facebook accounts that share misinformation. This is part of the Aspen Institute playbook. You saw it in that report where they stated that penalizing or demonetizing or putting users in holding rooms so they can't reach other people. This is Prince Harry's report. It says it right here. Super spreader accountability holds super spreaders of mis and disinformation to account with clear, transparent, and consistently applied policies that enable quicker, more decisive actions and penalties commensurate with their impacts, regardless of location or political views or role in society. We all saw in the Twitter files, the Aspen Institute internal communication was okay with taking away people's freedoms with this new framework that they were putting together that Harry was a part of. So, folks, this is the control that these new laws that are being passed in other Western countries are implementing. Now, don't get me wrong. I agree that there's a lot of danger out on the web, but I do believe that part of the responsibility in controlling this mess is parents controlling their kids. Because if these laws are so-called being used to protect kids, then it's a no-brainer. Like in society, when you have predators that are on there, promoting things that I can't really say on YouTube, that's a natural given for these tech companies to be monitoring and putting as priority. But when the government is using this as the front, now I have looked at that online safety bill, 255 pages worth, there's only a fraction of it that addresses keeping kids safe. The rest of it talks about whatever they deem hateful content and how to penalize the user, how to penalize the platforms. A lot of focus within this online safety bill is on Ofcom and its new set of powers. Let's face reality, it's inevitable that those powers are going to be abused. What's going to be interesting to see as we move along with these new bills being passed is how are these social media platforms going to handle this liability? We saw with WhatsApp, now I believe that they're no longer operating in the UK for the mere fact that it does pose a safety and security risk to users because they have to break encryption for the government to spy on people's conversations. We also saw in Canada, Facebook saying, "Nuh-uh, Canada, sorry, we don't really need your ad revenue. We're going to back out there." I think Rumble did the same thing with France, so I don't think people in France can access videos on the Rumble platform. We're going to see a lot of decentralization. Anyhow, going back to this Murthy versus Missouri lawsuit that's now being taken on by the Supreme Court is a very important one to watch because it involves the First Amendment, the federal government, and social media. Now, for all those that have been following me and seeing me cover portions of this situation, there are multiple lawsuits that are going on regarding this particular issue, but this is the main head one that has been picked up by the Supreme Court. We have the lawsuit with Renee DiResta and Alex Stamos in Louisiana. That's the lawsuit that Aspen Institute is a part of. There's also the lawsuit in Texas. I'm not sure if Aspen's been added there, but they might as well. I do think down the road, Harry and Meghan should be added to this because we have a foreign prince on U.S. soil deliberately undermining our Constitution and being a part of this censorship industrial complex. He's not registered as a foreign agent, and we have Department of Homeland Security pushing back on giving information to the American people. I think that's warranted and justified, in my opinion. These are legitimate arguments that should be taken up with the court. Anyhow, I thought that this was important to bring up, to put this on everybody's radar. As you can see now, COVID is over. There's no more money left in that. We're seeing the rise and focus of Meghan and Harry in the mental health arena and the online digital harms that it's causing, or at least seeding that idea, and using the youth as examples as to why there should be stronger regulation and clamp down and control on what people say and think to keep people safe. But we all know that that's not what they mean. They want people's data. They want to be able to push their narratives and control what you see and how you think, because that's how they're going to exploit and make money off of you. For the time being, all these people right now associated in Meghan and Harry's orbit talking about misinformation, disinformation, you cannot trust. And this guy, Vivek Murthy, who essentially has become the face of this Supreme Court case pertaining to this censorship battle that we're having and holding on to the First Amendment rights, it really is clear that birds of a feather flock together. But what do you guys think? Leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I will talk to you later. Bye!
It was such a fraud.